Welcome to Walk, Don't Run to the Doctor, where we are helping people avoid the burdens of preventable disease. By using evidence-based lifestyle tools to unlock each person's intrinsic healing ability, we're going to be supporting healthy families, healthy communities, and healthy individuals. Making your own food and moving every day vigorously can help you gain freedom from health debt. We can prove it. So welcome back to Walk, Don't Run to the Doctor, and once again we're with Karen Zink, who's helping people learn how to cook better food at home. On the last episode, we talked with Karen about the lifestyle benefits, the health benefits of cooking more at home, how to make it work, and now we're going to explore more of the practical aspects of putting this all together and making this part of your life, part of your priorities. Karen, tell me about involving your kids in the cooking process. You have a son and a daughter?
I do.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when did you get them involved in cooking? Because I think that parents really need to think about reducing their own workload by putting their kids to work.
As soon as they could walk, I think they were cooking. My son, who's 17, is an excellent cook. My daughter is an incredible baker. Their love of being in the kitchen has lasted. They're very good at it. They know what goes into the food that they're eating. So I think as early as your kids can hold a spoon or stand at the counter on a step stool. I remember the step stools. They were not tall enough to reach. It can build incredible memories that they will look back on for the rest of their lives.
When did you teach them to chop vegetables?
Chop vegetables, goodness. There were a lot of scary moments, I'll be honest. I don't know that my daughter chops vegetables to this day, but my son was probably seven or eight.
Yeah, that's probably when we started chopping vegetables with real knives, and we never saw a serious injury. But you know, life involves risk, and you're not going to learn something new without risk. One of the things we developed was I made a little platform on wheels. We called it the cop cart, and had a little rail around it so he couldn't fall out very easily. And it was basically just metal shelving put together with wheels on the bottom. And it allowed us to move him around the kitchen so he could wash dishes, chop vegetables, watch what we're doing. And it was really a fun little addition. And then we passed on to one other homeschool family after he was bigger. But yeah, get your kids involved. Yes. Don't make it be something, and then they're going to appreciate what goes into cooking as well. And you know, by all means, if you're a wife listening to this, get your husband involved. If you're a husband listening to this, get your wife involved. It's. I would argue that cooking together is fabulous for a relationship. And would you agree with that? And
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So make sure you got the fun part. What about friends? Getting friends involved in cooking. Say, would you have people over at your house and cook together at all? Did things like that?
Absolutely. That is some of our just favorite date nights, double dates. I have all of my very best friends cook. We cook together in the kitchen, and it can be so much fun. And
also you explore different flavors, different methods.
Oh, and I've learned
different techniques.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I've learned so much. Years ago, I had a dear friend who served, it was a family get together, and she was serving salmon. And I said, oh gosh, my kids won't eat salmon. I appreciate it. I hope they'll try it, but they're just not fish eaters. And she goes, oh, I can't wait for them to try my salmon. Perfect. My kids ate their salmon. I said, okay, well, what's your trick? And, how did you cook that? And she said, it's not how I cooked it, it's the salmon. And so she was getting direct from the fishing company, a direct ship. They delivered one time a year to Portland. And to this day, every year I go pick up my salmon that's shipped directly from the fishing boat from Alaska. So, you learn technique, you learn sources, you get inspired. It's such a time of connection. I love it. Cooking with my friends is one of my very favorite things.
And you address the really looking at your source of food too. And so we do the same thing. We have a couple of brothers who have a fishing boat in Bristol Bay in Alaska, and once a year we get our load of salmon for the year. It's a big check, but then it's done. And then we know we've got this good food in the freezer that we have to eat. We can't not eat it. It's already paid for. And we do the same thing with our beef. We get half a cow from Eastern Oregon, a grass-fed cow, and from Carmen Ranch. And these kinds of techniques really reduce your time and trouble because it's already in the freezer. And usually the price is going to be pretty good compared to supermarket prices as well. Not necessarily. So you're definitely getting a better product. You're usually getting a little bit better price. Speaking of price, most of us are on some kind of budget. And Karen, can you speak to how much money you save by cooking your own food?
Well, I did sushi one night, and I actually did the dollar for dollar price difference. And sushi is one of those things where you really create every bite of food, and that's where the cost lies. I think I spent about 18% of the cost of a sushi dinner out versus the sushi dinner that I prepared at home. So it was an 82% savings.
Wow.
That was the extreme.
So for most of us who are on a budget, then we better think about not just the health benefits and the fun benefits and the social benefits of cooking at home, but we're going to save a ton of money. And then if you organize your cooking so that you have something for lunch the next day, if you're somebody who goes to work, then there's another $5, $10, $15, $20 you're going to save the next day. So don't overlook that aspect of cooking at home too.
I think one challenging part is that if you go to a restaurant and you get takeout chicken fried rice in a plastic container, that's going to cost you, $15, $20. If you go to the store and you buy organic chicken, high quality rice, organic vegetables, you don't use processed sugar, you get organic soy sauce, coconut aminos, and rice wine vinegar. It is expensive to eat organic, local, high quality food. So that's the tricky part. It's if you value those things, it can cost more. You can definitely buy good chicken, good vegetables, reasonable rice, and save money. I think that's where, within any budget, you can do so much better at home. And it really is dependent on where your values, where the resources that you have, and how that aligns with your values.
And that's actually an interesting aspect too, because there's a lot of uncertainty over some of these decisions. So, for example, I would say if you're going to use rice, always use brown rice. And then whether or not you choose organic or not it's actually an interesting separate issue. It may well be, and over time, that we'll find out that eating organic is actually of a special value. I don't happen to think that right now, but I could easily be wrong. So don't let that be a challenge, a hurdle that stops you from eating good food. Whether you eat good food that's organically grown or not organically grown, make sure you're choosing good food that you make yourself. And by good food, I mean food that's not highly processed. And so make sure you divide your thinking into things that really matter big time. Olive oil, whole food, cooked at home. For example, brown rice, whole grains, beans, fruits, vegetables. And then what are some values that you add to that? And organic would be one of those that might be an additional value. Another one might be how much are you going to eat out? Are you a 90-10 rule person, a 95-5, an 80-20? Once again, these aren't things that we can really answer with certainty. But what we can answer with certainty is make sure most of your food should be cooked at home using whole foods and good ingredients. So one of the things that we often suggest to people who aren't used to eating good food is, how about if you go for 2 weeks, get rid of everything made with sugar and white flour, just be hardcore for a couple of weeks, and see if you feel any better. And we find that we think that close to 100% of the time, people come back and say, wow, I felt better.
Mm-hmm. So when you give that kind of direction to a patient, how do you encourage them to eat the foods that they love for those 2 weeks and really enjoy what they're eating?
So one of the things we do is we usually have them give us anywhere from 3 days to 2 weeks of diet log, so we know what they eat and sort of what they like. And then we go through that and we say, oh, so you like this kind of thing? How about if you had this instead? You like this? How about this instead? So if you're snacking on cookies in the afternoon, which most of us would love to do, frankly. But we don't. And I say, well, how would you feel about, instead of snacking on some cookies, how about if you had a banana and a handful of almonds? Or something like that. And I just keep exploring those ideas. Do you have any techniques that you use?
Perfect. Yeah, I would just say find things that people will enjoy eating so that they don't feel punished or deprived. Things should taste good, and they should enjoy the process. And hopefully that would be more sustainable if they really, really enjoy what they're eating. They feel the benefits from cutting out the things that are harmful to their health, but really enjoy the alternatives and the things that make them feel good.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point about just exploring not what you can't have, but what you can have, and out of what you can have, which is fruits, vegetables, beans, grains, animal products, dairy, butter, especially butter, olive oil. Then out of the things you can have, what do you enjoy, and how do you make it practical in your life?
Yes, and researching how to make those things taste better. A piece of raw broccoli is entirely different than a roasted, head of broccoli with sea salt and garlic and olive oil. How to make things taste good.
Have you been using the air fryer to that effect?
I love my air fryer.
Tell us about how you're using your air fryer for broccoli, for example.
Broccoli, yes. Yeah. I'll do whole cloves of garlic and kind of rub the broccoli with olive oil, some sea salt, and air fry. It's ready in 15 minutes from the air fryer.
And your kids enjoy it?
They do. Uh-huh. Yes, they do. They love it.
And so part of the thing about being a parent, I think, is how do you encourage your children to eat a lot of fruits and vegetables? Because there's components of a healthy diet, food made at home, using olive oil, adequate protein. And so one of the things we suggest to people is that they have protein with every meal and snack, if that works for you. But also, how do you get adequate fruits and vegetables into the diet? Because fruits and vegetables take work.
Right.
So you mentioned the broccoli in the air fryer. Is there any other tricks you use to help your kids eat more fruits and vegetables?
So one thing I've learned is that if I have carrot sticks in the fridge at the front in a little jar, they'll grab that. If it's ready, prepared, easy to see, easy to access, having fruits and vegetables out on the counter. So after school, there's kind of this gathering time, or they pass by the kitchen. Before homework, they're often hungry after school. Having brightly colored, beautiful fruits and vegetables out on a plate can make a huge difference. Or in the fridge, ready to go. Berries, oftentimes, a raspberry doesn't last very long after it's been washed, so that can be tricky. But strawberries will. If you wash them and cut them in half and put them in a little jar that catches their eye when they open that fridge door, much more likely to grab for that fruit or that carrot stick.
And if you're a parent listening to this, I hope you really pay attention to what Karen just said, because A, it's critical. B, it only works if they don't have a bowl of chips next to it, right? So if they've got a bowl of chips next to their carrot sticks, they're probably not going to eat their carrot sticks. So as a parent, you're an adult. Your kids are kids. An adult has a responsibility to take care of their kids. It's one of our greatest responsibilities of all time. And so what Karen just suggested is super important. And for example, on the weekends, if we're going to be around the home, then we do exactly what Karen just described. Have fruit, often already chopped up apples, for example, peeled oranges, carrot sticks, cucumber slices, celery sticks, broccoli or cauliflower flowerets. Maybe with a dip available, if we've made some of the dips from our cookbook, or hummus from our cookbook. You can make hummus using an immersion blender in about 5 minutes, just in case you're wondering. And so by having those foods on the counter and not having corn chips next to them or potato chips, then you're going to find your kids will eat a lot more fruits and vegetables and get a lot less illness. Was that too hardcore, Karen?
I don't think so at all. Absolutely.
Karen, you've touched on planning, you've touched on motivation, and sort of having some of the pieces in place. You talked about some of the gadgets around the kitchen you like, for example. If I went to your house and opened the fridge door, what would I see? Like right now?
Right now, okay. I think you would see a lot of glass containers. I have just about every size and shape, depending on what I want to store and have ready. You would see already peeled garlic, chopped onions. There is a container of carrot sticks right now. There's leftover chicken and roasted vegetables from last night. Oh, and quinoa. I always make a big batch of quinoa. That can go into breakfast. We did a breakfast, Mexican breakfast yesterday with quinoa as the base. I almost every week I make a batch of quinoa.
Excellent. And it's already cooked?
Already cooked.
Ready to go?
Yes.
Do you do stir fries?
I love stir fries.
What would go into a stir fry?
My son actually just got me a cookbook for my walk for Christmas. So stir fry, we do brown rice as a base. I love making chicken fried rice, kind of that method. So the egg first, then the onions, the meat, the rice at the end. So yeah, just veggies and whatever protein.
You'd also mentioned salt. Are you afraid of salt and it's going to destroy your health? Are you afraid to use salt?
I would only be afraid of not using salt.
And boy, I love the way you put that. For those of people who are listening to this who are afraid of salt in their diet, I would argue you're misguided. And let me just walk you through the sort of the medical facts. Food cooked at home, whole foods, are high in potassium. And when you have a food that's high in potassium, your body's ability to deal with salt, primarily through the kidney, is much better. And low salt diets are actually associated with higher death rates. So, if, for example, you might be somebody with high blood pressure who's been told to avoid salt, we would avoid high salt foods made outside the home, like chips and breads and so on. But we would say don't avoid salting your food at home to the extent that it takes to make them taste good, because if you do that, you're going to be getting somewhere around 2 to 5 grams of salt a day. That is actually the level that's associated with the best health outcomes, and when you add that to the good health outcomes associated with home-cooked foods, it's a win-win. So don't be afraid of salt. Add it to your own food cooked at home. Do be afraid of salt that comes in the breads and chips. That is the primary source of excessive salt in our society. Probably some of the people listening to this, Karen, just refuse to cook at home. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of awkward for us because we're all about our patients cooking good food. So how can you help them?
That's what I do for people who either can't cook at home or just simply don't want to. It brings too much stress and pressure to cook at home. So that's what I do, and that's what I love, is providing nutrition that people will enjoy eating with people that they enjoy that time with in their homes, tailored to their preferences, whether it's spice or their goals with health and nutrition. I get to bring health and wellness to families. So when my daughter was playing competitive sports, I got to be the team mom, and we would travel for tournaments. And so we had 15 young athletes, and the difference from when we had pizza the night before a big game or a home-cooked meal was night and day. I couldn't believe it. It wasn't like, oh, you have to eat healthy for a month to feel the difference. It was overnight in these kids and these competitive athletes. So that was a huge joy for me to cook healthy food that allowed them to perform so much better the next day.
And did the kids help you prepare that food?
No. They were busy. They were traveling. They were preparing. They were being teenagers, hanging out in their bunk rooms. The parents cooked together. That brought a lot of joy. But the kids, they did every single one. This was a great group of kids. They always said thank you and helped with the dishes.
So if you can't help with preparation, at least you can help with the dishes and
Absolutely.
Clean them. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Karen, just in terms of if you were talking to, say, a young mother, a young father, raising a family, and they're maybe struggling with the budget, they may have never really lived in a culture where cooking was a big deal. You know, you and I maybe had the value of growing up in homes where cooking was a thing. So let's pretend you're talking to a young couple. They have kids. They're maybe on a budget, and they're not really familiar with the whole idea of cooking most of your food at home. What would you throw out there as some of the major benefits that you would feel they should think about?
Okay. I would say first, the health and wellness of your family. Just understanding the impact of cooking at home and what impact that has on your health and wellness. Teaching your kids these skills. I think that's a tremendous lifelong benefit for them. Also, practically, you have leftovers. You have food that you enjoy, that you know the ingredients. That time together, eating around the table, community.
And I would add to that a couple of things. One is, we already touched on the budget several times. That's a big deal for me. The second thing is, when people eat at home, they eat less. That's actually been studied. If people eat, the more people eat at home, the fewer calories consumed. So somebody who eats 1 or 2 meals a day outside the home consumes 300 to 500 calories a day more typically than somebody who eats food at home. And that's because we think it's because of the hidden calories in foods, especially sugars. You have a salad, a soup, a casserole, a sauce at a commercial restaurant, and it's going to have handfuls of sugar in there because, if you want to sell more food, put more sugar in there.
Absolutely.
So think about all those benefits, and she mentioned the health and lifestyle benefits, and one of those is that when we eat commercially prepared foods, then our risk of dying prematurely, because we're all going to die, we think, the risk of dying prematurely, of having cancer, of having diabetes, of having heart disease, are dramatically increased with industrially prepared foods. So that's TV dinners, highly processed foods, protein isolates, like the protein powders, the bars, the breakfast cereals, all these sort of things. For every 10% increase in those foods that you consume in your diet, made outside the home in industrial facilities, then you get 10 to 15% increase in cancers, especially breast cancer, heart disease, risk of dying prematurely, diabetes, and so on. So whenever you see a dose relationship like that in medicine, it actually adds quite a bit of strength to the fact that it's probably quite a real effect. And I'm not aware of a single study looking at highly processed foods, what's called ultra-processed foods in the research literature, that hasn't shown this relationship, this dose relationship between ill health and highly processed foods. So take that, the first thing Karen said, take that really seriously. So whenever you're thinking about walk, don't run to the doctor, think about making the world a healthier place. That's what we're trying to do. We're doctors and nurses and other health providers who want to see the world with less preventable disease. And most disease is preventable. Most people should be able to live to 80, 90 years old and die fairly suddenly after a short illness. And that's okay. We're all going to probably die. But we don't want to have that lingering reduction in health over those years. And instead, we want to live a full and healthy life and then keel over quickly. So we'd like any doctors and nurses thinking about this to really see how we can carry this message better to our patients. And as Karen points out, you can cook at home, you're going to save money, you're going to have better health, and you can always get a home chef if you don't want to cook for yourself. There are a lot more ideas that might help you with food choices, and there's many, many books. Karen just mentioned a new book she got on stir fries that she uses with her wok at home. We always like to mention our own book. This is self-serving, our own book, Good Food, Great Medicine, which is now its 4th edition. But whatever you do, look for ideas. It might be YouTube, it might be friends, it might be neighbors. Look for accomplished cooks who can mentor you. But whatever you do, cook at home. And thanks very much, Karen. Karen's a real-life home chef who helps families get going where they need to go with home cooking. And thanks for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.